Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jaya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada. Bhai Charanarinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter 35. Entitled This Remote Corner of the World. Gainesville, July 29, 1971. Srila Prabhupada asked how fast the car was going and how long it would take them to get to Gainesville. 65 miles per hour, the driver said. It would take an hour and a half. Prabhupada observed the scenery along the way, pine forests, marshes, exotic birds, and occasional armadillo foraging near the highway. Lotuses and lilies grew wild in the canals along the roadside. And bright sunshine warmed the clear air. Gainesville was a side trip for Srila Prabhupada, a special day of preaching. He had left Shyamasundar, his secretary, in New York, and brought with him only Aravinda, his servant. He had come for a day to bring the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to yet another city. When the devotees had picked him up at the airport, he appeared grave. But on catching sight of the devotees, he smiled wonderfully. And then turning to Hridayananda, he asked, which way? He was like a transcendental fighter asking to be pointed toward the battle. Prabhupada walked along the flower-sprinkled pathway and into the temple, a rented house near the University of Florida campus. In the temple room, he stood a moment studying a crude but sincerely executed painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Hridayananda asked Prabhupada if he would like to rest, and he nodded. While the devotees performed kirtan, Prabhupada retired to his room, returning later to sit on the large blue velvet Vyasasana in the small temple room. In addition to Prabhupada's disciples from Gainesville, Miami, Tallahassee, and New Orleans, many university students and other guests were also present. It is so nice to see so many young boys and girls here, Srila Prabhupada began, in this remote corner of the world, so far away from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada lectured about the saving grace of chanting the holy name of the Lord. One of his disciples, he said, had been present when his mother was dying. Because he had been telling her about Krishna and Hare Krishna, she said to her son in her last words, "Where is your Krishna? Is he here now?" And then she died. For uttering the holy name and thinking of Krishna, Prabhupada said she would go to the spiritual world. After Prabhupada finished his talk, a girl reporter from the university newspaper raised a hand. "I see almost all young people here," she said. "Why is that?" Prabhupada replied with a question. Why are there so many young people in the university? The girl reflected for a moment. Well, I guess that's the age for education. Srila Prabhupada. Okay, this is the last line of this particular. Prabhupada said, yes. So this is the age for Krishna consciousness. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhav Jai Shri Radha Giridhar Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Shri Gauri Sai Ki Jai Sai Guru Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udire. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Samastute Bhakti Bhavati. Reading from chapter 15 of the 5th canto. This chapter is entitled The Glories of the Descendants of King Priyavrata. We're reading the first text in prose. Shri Sukha Uvacha Bharatasyatmaja Sumatir Nama Bhitoyam Yuhabhava Kechit Yuhabhava Kechit Pakandina Rishabha Padavim Anuvatmanam Chanarya Aveda Samanatam Devatam Swamanishaya Papiyasya Kalau Kalpyashyanti. Go to the synonym. Shri Sukha Uvacha. Shri Sukadev Goswami continued to speak. Bharatasya of Bharat Maharaj. Atmaja, the son. Sumati Nama Abhihita, named Sumati. Yam, unto whom? Uha Bhava, indeed. Kechit, some. Pakandinaha, atheists, men without Vedic knowledge. Rishabha Padavim, the path of King Rishabhadev. Anuvatmana, following. Cha, and Anaryaha, not belonging to the Aryans who strictly follow the Vedic principle. Aveda Samam Natam, not enumerated in the Veda. Devatam, to be Lord Buddha or similar Buddhist deity. Swamanishaya, by their own mental speculation. Papiyasya, most sinful. Kalo, in this age of Kali. Kalpayishyanti, will imagine. You hear the translation of purport by His Divine Grace by Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Sukadev Goswami continued, the son of Maharaj Bharata, known as Sumati, followed the path of Rishabhadev. But some unscrupulous people imagine him to be Lord Buddha himself. These people, who were actually atheistic and of bad character, took up the Vedic principles in an imaginary, infamous way to support their activities. These sinful people accepted Sumati as Lord Buddha Dev and propagated the theory that everyone should follow the principles of Sumati. In this way, they were carried away by mental concord. Purport. Those who are Aryans strictly follow the Vedic principles. But in this age of Kali, a community has sprung up known as Arya Samaj, which is ignorant of the import of the Vedas in the Parampara system. Their leaders decry all bona fide acharyas, and they pose themselves as the real followers of Vedic principles. These acharyas who do not follow the Vedic principles are presently known as the Arya Samaj or the Jain. Not only do they not follow Vedic principles, but they have no relationship with Lord Buddha. Imitating the behavior of Sumati, they claim to be descendants of Rishabhati. Those who are Vaishnavas carefully avoid their company because they are ignorant of the path of the Veda. In Bhagavad Gita 15, Krishna says, Vedeshcha sarver ahameva vedya. The real purpose of the Vedas is to understand me. This is the injunction of all Vedic literature. One who does not know the greatness of Lord Krishna cannot be accepted as an Arya. Lord Buddha, an incarnation of Lord Krishna, accepted a particular means to propagate the philosophy of Bhagavad Dharma. He preached almost exclusively among atheists. Atheists do not want any God, and Lord Buddha therefore said, there is no God. But he adopted the means to instruct his followers for their benefit. Therefore, he preached in a duplicitous way, saying that there is no God. Nonetheless, he himself was an incarnation of God. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnava Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajiva Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyev Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishthaya Bhute, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gaura Bhakti Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, so this is the beginning of a new chapter. And this is considered like a transition chapter. Till now we were discussing the descendants of King Priyavrata. And this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami just very quickly goes through all the other descendants. Then the next chapter starts talking about the descriptions of the material universe. This is just transitioning between the descendants of Priyavrata and the descriptions of the material universe that will continue. So here we're talking about the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu that started in the third canto. So Swayambhava Manu had 3 daughters and 2 sons. And the first of the 3 daughters was Devahuti, which we spoke about in the 3rd canto. And from the union of Devahuti and Kadamba Muni, we had Kapila Muni. Then another 2 daughters, which are Prasuti and Akuti. Prasuti married Daksha, and then we had those pastimes. And he had 2 sons. The eldest son was King Priyavrata, and the younger son was Uttanapad. And Uttanapad, because Priyavrata Maharaj, from young he was a renunciate, so he gave up the kingdom and he went to practice performing austerities and process of bhakti. And so Uttanapad became the king, and from him, again, glorified because Dhruva Maharaj appeared as his son. And then from there we discussed the lineage of Anga, Venu, Prithu Maharaj, Prachina Barishat, ended with the Prachetas. And then the lineage sort of ended there. And after that, because there was no suitable king, then the elder son, Priyavrata, had to be summoned back from his austerities and under the instruction of his father, his spiritual master, and his grandfather. He took up the throne. And then from him we saw the lineage that continued from Agnidra, and then we had Rishabhadev, and Rishabhadev's 100 sons, of which prominent one was Bharat Maharaj. Then from Bharat Maharaj we saw how he took birth again as a deer and then as Jada Bharat. And in the last chapter he was instructing Maharaj Rahugana about the allegorical story of the forest of material enjoyment. And here we speak about Sukadeva Goswami is describing the son of Bharat Maharaj, who was Sumati. And he describes how there was people were using the example of Rishabhadev and Sumati to take up Vedic principles, but in the wrong way. So Prabhupada starts the beginning of the purport by describing who are Aryans. And there are many in different parts of Prabhupada's purports. He describes different definitions of Aryans. Here he speaks about Aryans who are those who follow Vedic principles very strictly. In other places, he talks about Aryans as very civilized people, very spiritually advanced, advanced in spiritual knowledge. He also describes them as those who give more importance to spiritual life compared to material life. So these are all different definitions of Aryan. Another definition Prabhupada gives is those who follow Varnashrama Dharma. They are considered Aryan. In whichever way, main thing is they follow Vedic principles, and Krishna explains that Vedeshta Sarve Ahameva Vedya. The purpose of all the Vedas is to understand Krishna. So if you profess to follow Vedas, but don't come to the conclusion that Krishna is to be known by the Vedas, then you can't be considered an Aryan. Prabhupada talks about this particular society called Arya Samaj. I think many of us would have heard about. I don't know the details of Arya Samaj, so just theoretically just read on the internet. And Prabhupada has got many, he mentions about Arya Samaj in different places. So it's founded in the 1870s by the leader, his name was Swami Dayananda Saraswati. It was more of a Hindu reform movement. It was the time the British was there, and he drew some inspiration from some other Bengali societies which had similar principles. They accepted the Vedas, but they rejected things like the Puranas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. They rejected acharyas, rejected deity worship, and all sorts of rituals. Again, because the rituals were not being followed properly, people didn't know the purpose behind the ritual. So they rejected all that. And they worshipped an impersonal form of God. They would chant, Om, impersonal form of God. And their aim was to promote sort of social upliftment of people, righteousness. And they used the Vedas to misinterpret the Vedas to promote their own cause. So they're not really following the Vedas because they don't accept Krishna. So they're not really Aryans, but they call themselves Arya Samaj. They say that they're the real followers of Vedic tradition. So they're called, in one sense, they're Nirvisheshavadis. They accept there's God, but God has no form. He's impersonal. So they're Nirvisheshavadis. So these are Anaryans. Prabhupada, Krishna also mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Anarya. He says, he tells, chastises Arjuna, how come you're acting like an Anaryan? So here Prabhupada also talks about, here Sukadeva Goswami talks about a few other types of Anaryans. And these Anaryans are not Nirvisheshavadis, but Shunyavadis, who say there is no God. One of these groups that Prabhupada talks about are the Jains. They are mostly, so the Jains, we might have also heard about their philosophy. I don't know too much about their philosophy, but again, what Prabhupada says, we can make out of it. Earlier in this chapter, we're talking about King Rishabhadev's activities after he renounced his kingdom. He handed over his kingdom to his 100 sons. Then he became completely absorbed in practicing devotional service. So he was like an avadut. He would be roaming around naked and not acting according to Vedic traditions because he is above the bodily concept of life. He was not attached to this body. He was not identifying with his body. So he had renounced and he was just wandering around. At that time, he came to South India, Karnataka, and he came to this tract of land, which is part of the Konka, Venka, and Kutaka provinces. Srila Prabhupada it's mentioned in the earlier chapters of this canto. And there he was walking around like a madman, completely naked, and there are thousands of people following him, so many followers. Because people could recognize that he wasn't an ordinary person. The king of that tract of land, his name was Arhat. And he saw Rishabhadev walking around without following any regulative principles, not following Vedic principles, and he had thousands of people following him. And he became envious. He said, I'm a king, but I don't have so many people following me around. What is so special about this person? Then he started imitating. He said, so if I also can do this, give up the Vedic principles and walk around naked, then I can also get all these followers. And then he started this new religion. And that was based on, that's the Jain religion. So prior to all this knowledge, I was thinking, Jain religion originated from King Rishabhadev, but it's actually it was someone trying to imitate King Rishabhadev. In Krishna's pastimes, also there was someone who was trying to imitate Krishna. Poundrak. He also attached some extra arms to himself instead of the four-handed form. He had a fake cutout chakra in his hand. And he sent a messenger to Krishna's court in Dwarka, and he said, you please except write a letter saying that I am the original Vasudeva and you're the fake. So this happened even in Krishna's time. So this person, King Arhat, he decided to imitate Lord Rishabhadev and rejected he said he externally accepted the Vedas, but he rejected all the principles of the Vedas. And then he was, well, actually, they were following the Vedas because he thought Rishabhadev was not following any of the Vedic principles. So then the principle is what's the need of God? There's material nature and the soul, and there's no need for God. But they had some good, they preached good conduct. They had a few tenets which included non-violence, giving up attachment, self-discipline, getting rid of karma. So at least the principles are based on the mode of goodness. But then their perfection was just to be liberated from all karma. There's no concept of the fact that the soul is in the material body that causes pains and pleasures. And once the soul is liberated, you're in a very peaceful condition. But it doesn't explain where the soul goes, what happens to the soul, what is the nature of the soul. So that was at the time of King Rishabhadev when Arhat was there. Now it's described that Sumati, the grandson of Maharaj Rishabhadev, he was following the same path as Rishabhadev, in the sense that he was also very devotional, and he also decided to renounce, and he was like an avadut. And again, like Rishabhadev, because he was an avadut, he wouldn't have to follow all these rules and regulations. And again, like Arhat, there were others who saw Sumati and decided, okay, why not we be like him? We'll renounce the Vedas. And these people were, so they used Sumati to propagate the philosophy of Lord Buddha. So that is another philosophy that is Shunyavad, which denounces God. But that Buddha's philosophy, Buddha we understand is an incarnation of Krishna. So that Buddhist philosophy would be different from what these sinful people, they were trying to imitate Sumati, what they were trying to do. So Prabhupada talks about the Buddhist philosophy, and that we've heard quite a few times from Sri Prabhupada's purports. So understand that there was a period of time where people were following the Vedic injunctions to get elevation to higher planets, and mainly through a lot of animal sacrifice. And it's described that the river in Gaya became red with just blood of all the animals. And Lord Buddha, he wanted to stop this animal killing that was based, because when he told people not to do it, they said, look, it's mentioned in the Vedas, so it's bona fide. So in order to relieve them of their suffering, he had to denounce the Vedas, he had to reject the Vedas, told them, no, look, this is not bona fide. Even though he is Krishna, and he knows Vedesha Sarved, Ahamevi Vedya, the purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, but he rejected it. And it's described because he was so compassionate. Jayadev Goswami in his Dasavata Stotra, he says, Nindasi yajna videv ahashruti jatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashu ghatam keshavadrita buddha sarira jaya jagadisha hare. Sadaya hridaya. Lord Buddha's heart was so soft, so compassionate. And he saw the Pasugatam, all these animals being killed. So he was compassionate on two accounts. One, seeing the killing of all these living entities, the animals, his heart was melting. And the other thing was seeing all these people who were engaged in killing, and they were incurring so much reaction. So both ways his heart was melting, and he was, out of compassion, he wanted to reduce their suffering. So he propagated the philosophy that there's no God, we don't have to follow the Vedas. But in this sense, even though he was telling them not to follow the Vedas, it was actually to elevate them. So we understand that everyone's at a different level. If you have someone at kindergarten level, you can't be teaching them about, in kindergarten, you can tell them 1 + 1, they'll understand. You tell them about -1, negative numbers, they can't understand. Or to talk about calculus and higher mathematics. So for that particular moment, at that level where people were, Krishna had to come in that particular form to instruct them. And he was sort of, it's described in Bhagavatam, the first canto, that in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theists. Seeking to delude people, and that philosophy spread far and wide. And it was described that being an atheist and a meat eater, that's sinful. But better than that is to be an atheist and not eating meat. So it's one level up, better than being a meat eater. So he's just elevating them from the most base level to at least one level higher. And it's described that Lord Buddha also didn't deny God, he just remained silent when he was asked about it. And the goal is to become free from this repeated cycle of birth and death, to just, in a way, sort of disappear. And then we understand that this philosophy was then followed up. So once you've cleared the slate, you've got rid of the meat eating, you've brought everyone to at least the mode of goodness, then the Lord sent Lord Shiva out of compassion to elevate them. So from kindergarten, you're going up to the next level to primary school. And so he came as Shankaracharya. And he said, yes, ahimsa is good. But he said, actually, ahimsa is also found in the Vedas. So you can understand the Vedas, you can understand ahimsa from the Vedas. And then he taught them about the Vedas and about God. But he described that God was formless. And so at least they were not, from not accepting God at all, to suddenly come up to a personal form of God might be too big a jump. So there's a transition. So he talks about an impersonal God. And then he drove the Buddhists mostly out of India. And then from there we understand Lord Krishna sent the different acharyas, the Vaishnava acharyas. We have Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Nimbarka, Vishnu Swami. And then they established from the monoistic, the Advaita principle. They started propounding the Dvaita principle, that is duality, there's God and the spirit soul, and some philosophical differences. And then as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came when the time was right, and he, whatever, there were little differences in the 4 different sampradayas, he combined all of that and came out with the Achintya Abheda Veda Tattva. And we see that Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtare. Srila Prabhupada's, one of his mission was to go to Vani Pracharani, to spread the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to not just India, but all over the world, and especially those who are Nirvisheshavadis and Shunyavadis, which is most people in this world. We can even in so this concept of Nirvisheshavadis, where the impersonalists were even there during the time of Srimad Bhagavatam. So how can we see how the impersonalists, Mayavadis and Shunyavadis can become devotees? How can they come to the process of accepting a personal God? So we see in the beginning of the author or the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami. It's described in the initial period when he first appeared, he was an impersonalist. And then he left immediately once he was born. And as he was walking through the forest, he heard the glories of Krishna. So he heard about some woodcutters who were taught by Vyasadeva. And they were singing two verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. One was describing the beauty of Krishna, Barha Pida. And the other verse was describing the mercy of Krishna. Aho Bakiyam Stanakalakutam. So he described one, the beauty of Krishna, exactly like how Radha Giridhari is dressed on the altar. And the second thing was the mercy of Krishna. He was saying how, when Bakasura's sister, Putana, came to give Krishna milk with a breast smeared with poison. She wanted to kill Krishna, but Krishna accepted that her service he accepted her service and gave her the position of a Datri Mata, a nurse mother in the spiritual world. So he's saying, how merciful is this Lord? Someone comes to kill him and he gives such a high position. That's the mercy of Krishna and the beauty of Krishna. Just hearing these two aspects of Krishna's personal form, an impersonalist became personal. He immediately went back to Shukadeva Goswami and he asked him, where did you learn this from? He said, oh, it's from your father. He went back to Sukadeva Goswami and heard Srimad Bhagavatam. Another group of devotees were the Chatur Kumaras. And how did they become personalists? Just by smelling the tulasi that was offered at the lotus feet of in many other examples we see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Again, he came in contact with many Mayavadis. And one of them was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So many of these impersonalists, because they're following their regulations very strictly, they come to the mode of goodness. And because they're in the mode of goodness, it's very easy for them to take up to the process of. Okay. But that alone is not enough. The main thing would be the association of the pure devotee. So then it's a very favorable condition. The minute they come in contact with a pure devotee, they can easily take up to the process of bhakti. We see from the pastimes of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was one of the leading Mayavadis at that time. And just by the association of his brother-in-law, Gopinath Acharya, he became eligible to have the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he became a personalist. And this we see from Prabhupada's pastimes. Actually, the whole material world, or actually the Western world, because some devotees are during Prabhupada's time, they're saying, oh, Mayavadis and Shunyavadis, we don't have any impersonalist sannyasis in America at that time. Just common people. So who are these Nirvishesha Shunyavadis that Prabhupada is preaching in the Paschatya Desh? So then their realization was us. Because of material advancement, everyone's become sort of denying God. You don't want to know, you're not interested in knowing about God. Because if there's God, then there's rules and regulations that will stop our sense enjoyment. So those are the Nirvisheshavadis, the Shunyavadis, that's all of us. And through Prabhupada's association, They were all able to understand the personal form of the Lord. There's just one pastime about this Arya Samaj. So in the early days before Srila Prabhupada left for the West, he was in one part of India, and he had met this Bengali gentleman. His name was Chatterjee. It wasn't in Bengal; it was outside Bengal. So after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, some devotees were there distributing in that city. They were distributing Back to Godhead magazine, and there was this sign that said, marriages registered here. So this person was like he would register marriages, and his name was Chatterjee. So they thought, it sounds like a Bengali gentleman, he might give some donation, so we'll go to his house. So they went there and they wanted to distribute the magazines. And this Chatterjee, he was saying that actually Srila Prabhupada came here many years ago. And he distributed those, those first copies of Back to Godhead magazine that Prabhupada used to do everything himself, print it, distribute himself. And he said he stayed here for a few days. He showed him this is where he stayed, this is where he cooked, this is where he hung his clothes. And he said we had many arguments because this Chatterjee, he was from Arya Samaj. And Prabhupada stayed there just a few days and he told him, you're just cheating. He said, I know behind, when no one's looking, you're offering obeisances to Lord Vishnu. But he was an impersonalist and he accepted. He said, I was an impersonalist. And Prabhupada told him, just give up this impersonal philosophy. And then he was also worshipping all sorts of devatas, but he was not getting any bliss. And he asked Prabhupada this. And then Prabhupada gave him a signed copy of the Bhagavatam, the initial first volume. And there he had underlined and he showed him, this is why you're not happy. He said, you're not happy because you do not accept the personal form of the Lord. And after that, he didn't see Prabhupada at all. Prabhupada didn't come back to that area. And the devotees came, he said, after that meeting with Prabhupada, I gave up the impersonalism. I became a personalist. And then he showed his deities, he was worshipping Radha Krishna deities. But he said, externally, he is still part of the Arya Samaj, but internally, he's a personalist and he's worshipping Radha Krishna deities. And then his daughter was there, so he pointed his daughter and she was fortunate. So what happened was, at that time when Prabhupada came, his daughter was really young. So Prabhupada put his daughter on Prabhupada's lap and he fed her some prasad that Prabhupada cooked there. And then he told that child, he said, always eat prasad. And he said, don't listen to what your father says. Because he was an impersonalist. And at that time when the devotees went, she was also she was a personalist. She had accepted the personal worship of Radha and Krishna. So just the association of devotees and hearing about the pastimes of Krishna can change even the stone-hearted hearts of atheists and Shunyavadis, provided they are in the mode of goodness. The other thing we could also just reflect upon Prabhupada, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gives a very strong warning not to hear from the Mayavadis, or hear Krishna Katha from the Mayavadis. And Prabhupada here also, I think he mentioned. So we should be very careful not to hear from the Mayavadis. So that's a warning for us. There's impersonals, they are sort of everywhere in this day and age. Lots of different lectures, videos. You could easily get, you might not realize it when you're hearing it, and by the time you finish hearing it, and then you realize, oh, this person was a impersonalist. Because they can speak Krishna Katha beautifully. Conclusion might be an impersonal conclusion. So then that can spoil our consciousness. More practically, we're all in many WhatsApp groups, lots of WhatsApp groups. And people are a bit trigger happy. They just see a message and then they just forward it. Sometimes they don't even read the message. And once in a while, are these messages, videos, or some articles that are actually written by some impersonalists, but because there's something about Krishna there and someone gets excited and then they forward it to 100, 200 people in different WhatsApp groups. That's, again, quite dangerous, so we have to be a bit more selective. We've got to read and be careful not to be affected by that. And in one sense, our movement we're a personal movement. And impersonalism can creep in through many other different ways. It can creep in our relationships. It can creep in dealings with devotees, even in terms of our relationship with a spiritual master. If we don't develop a personal relationship of serving either Vani or Vapu, then that can become impersonal. There are many ways that can seep into our practice of bhakti, and we've got to be very careful. One thing that, so even when we're in Kirtan, some impersonalism can creep in. Jayadvaita Maharaj, he has written a book, started off an article, but now I think it's a book on Kirtan standards. So there he talks about different things, and one of the things that he talks about, and Prabhupada is, there are lots of quotes from Prabhupada about different aspects of Kirtan, and one aspect, in terms of impersonalism, he was talking about singing, at the end of Aarti, we sing Jai Gurudev, Jai Prabhupada, and then Jai Gurudev. And then that happens everywhere now. Jai Gurudev, Gurudev, Gurudev. And I don't know how, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you would never see that at least in the big temples in India and Vrindavan. It'd always be Jai Prabhupada, and then it ends there, if we do sing that. So this is from 1977, Gaur Purnima. Prabhupada is saying, you do not sing Jai Gurudev. Gurudev is impersonal. It can mean anyone. If you want to indicate your spiritual master, you call him by name. So it is Jai Prabhupada. If you want to sing Jai Gurudev, Prabhupada said in his presence, he said you can sing Jai Gurudev, but immediately after that you sing Jai Prabhupada. Otherwise, it becomes a personal school. Quite a few times. Another example, in Guru Puja in Mayapur, Achyutananda Maharaj started chanting Jai Gurudev, and Prabhupada stopped us. He says, what is this Jai Gurudev? What Gurudev? Who Gurudev? This is Mayavad. It should not be done. As soon as we offer obeisances to Guru, the name should be there. We are strictly personalists. The Sahajiyas, they write glories to Guru or Jai Gurudev. Why are you learning this impersonalism? Who has taught you? Daily I am offering obeisances to my Guru, vibrating his real name, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta says. Otherwise, it is impersonal. So it's something very simple. We don't think about it, just do it. And this is how it starts. Right? When you start imitating Rishabhadev, start imitating Sumati. And then you start imitating, everyone's doing it. And then now it happens everywhere, even the biggest temples. Prabhupada, these are small things, that's something to think about. So whenever we sing, there's no need to sing. There you go. And then you see if someone maybe not even initiated and they're, what are you talking about? What are you singing? You're singing a Prabhupada, then we're just saying Jai Prabhupada. There's always a name, he's not an impersonal. You can't say, you sing whichever guru you want to, you think about when you sing. So, yeah, something for us to think about. We'll end here. Any questions, comments, or realizations? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much. So just about Gurudev, like sing Jai Gurudev, like when Prabhupada was there, he was the only guru. So Srila Prabhupada was the only guru. Now we have so many gurus in ISKCON, and we have so many disciples of different gurus. So I guess in modern context, when we're saying Gurudev, we're actually saying our respective Gurudevs, like we're.
So, Jaya Gautam Maharaj's explanation was there's no need to sing Jai Gurudev. There's no need. Actually, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is that's enough. There's no need to sing Jaya Radha Mantra, Jaya Radha Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna Mantra, everything is in fact. But we have sort of moved to that. But there's no need to. Guru Bhakti is not shown by that singing of Jai Gurudev. We don't have to. Not necessary at all. So we can't. There's no need to sing that. It's just we can sing Jai Prabhupada. There's no need to. This is Jai. And if you want to sing, so in terms of, sorry. So if we do sing, so when there's the appearance day of the spiritual masters, so then we sing Jai Gurudev, but then we also sing the name of the spiritual master. If I were to sing the name of my spiritual master, I'll sing Jaya Subhag Swami Srila Gurudeva Jaya Subhag, or whatever, whoever your spiritual master is. So the name must be there. Unless, but Vyasa Puja Day, we know that we're just glorifying this particular personality. I mean, at home, in association of your God brothers, that's fine, because we know we are glorifying. But even then, we want to say the name of the spiritual master. And you can do that we have a group of your God brothers, and you're singing that. We sing the spiritual master's name, that's fine. But in a temple where there's so many devotees, and everyone's with different spiritual masters, we can't be singing the individual names of the spiritual master. But yet we don't just say that as an umbrella to cover all spiritual masters. And this is what Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Advait Jaya Advaita Maharaj is what? Yeah, in his physical presence, yeah, he's there in his form, personal form. Yeah, in his personal form, yeah. And then like Vyasa Puja, yeah. Yes, Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So in a congregation or in a temple, there's so many different disciples. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Prabhupada said, if you want to sing Jai Gurudev immediately, then you sing Jai Prabhupada, because then you're saying who that spiritual master, who the guru is. You're not, it's not just impersonal, you're not just leaving it at Gurudev. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, in your direct spiritual master is not Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, but there's no need to, so that's the point. There's no need to. That's just something that we've come up with over the years. Everyone's doing it, we do it, but there's no. That article by Jay Advaita Maharaj explains it very nicely. There's a lot of things that are not necessary. Jay Advaita Maharaj? Or if you just Google, you find, I think it's Kirtan Reform or something, Jay Advaita Maharaj, Kirtan Standards, just Google it, that article. Oh, a number of years ago, I've read it at least 7, 8, 9 years ago. There were some articles and then it became like a book. It's quite very interesting. He talks about a lot of things that we're doing now, and we'll understand that actually that was completely.
Hey, Hare Krishna, bro. So I agree with what you've said and what you've mentioned about Prabhupada mentioning that, but we also have to look at the context, because Prabhupada's time, you can see that Prabhupada was the only guru, right? And so when somebody's singing in front of Prabhupada, Jai Gurudev, it could be anyone, which is right, because there's so many gurus. And there were times when the disciples were going to other gurus to get more, try to see if they can get more information or guidance and things like that. And Prabhupada was not very happy that you read my books, everything is there. So Prabhupada was trying to, we have to understand certain things in context, because certain instructions that he's giving guidance at a certain time, place, and circumstance, have to understand that in context, So I'm not saying that okay, we should or shouldn't sing Jai Gurudev. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is certain conversations that Prabhupada's had, we have to see them in context as well, because otherwise we take that bit and then we apply, but we're applying in the wrong. I'm not saying that what you've said is wrong or not right. I'm just saying that we have to see things holistically, because the context when devotees are singing Gurudev in the temple now is the appreciation of the respective spiritual masters after Prabhupada, Prabhupada's disciples. And obviously there are so many devotees in the temple room. Some of them are disciples of, somebody else, and they have their own gurus, and they might not be the same guru, right? So you can't really say each and everybody's name at that particular time. By the time we say everybody's name, we'll be like, extending. So to cover all of those disciples, gurus, or Prabhupada's disciples, that's the context in which the ISKCON devotee, well, that's the context when I say Jai Gurudev, that's the context I'm saying it in. So Prabhupada's time, he was the only guru. Now we've got so many gurus. So to cover everybody, we say guru, but that's just a comment I'm making. But I'm not saying that. I agree that what you're saying also, that I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just make a point here.
So that's a good point. We don't, Prabhupada might have said something in a particular context, and then there's some example of how Prabhupada said something about some devotee who accidentally ate mushroom or something. He said that's okay. And then this devotee, he started growing mushrooms, doing a business out of mushrooms, because he quoted that. Prabhupada said that was okay. But it was in a particular. So like that, but this was, again, this is not something that this was explained to me by my spiritual master, and I was guided to the book by Jayadvaita Maharaj. And there he gives, so I'm just quoting a few things, but in the book he's very detailed, specific, different situations, not just one or two situations. So yeah, if you read that book, you probably get, I'm just quoting bits and pieces of that. And the other thing was, yeah, he said, we don't have to sing Jai Gurudev in order to remember. In Prabhupada's time, very often he'd end off the kirtan with just the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and then it ends off. You don't have to go into Jaya, rather this, rather that. Jaya. Like he talks about how even they're not bona fide, like Jaya Pancha Tattva it's not a bona fide mantra. It's not something to be done. But that depends on the musical ability of the person. You can sing Jaya anything you want if it keeps to the rhythm and the tune. But that's might not be bona fide. Like, this is what Jay right tomorrow makes very good. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, I think that's in Jayadvaita Maharaj's book as well about singing. So whenever, as Prabhupada also said, whenever we sing, when we say Radharani, it must always be followed by Krishna. There's never, because then if not, we're Sahajiyas and we're not Brajavasi, so we don't say Radhe. Even Prabhupada in Vrindavan wasn't saying Radhe. Someone would say Radhe, Radhe, he'd say Hare Krishna. And someone would say Haribol and he would say Hare Krishna. He won't say Haribol back, he would say Hare Krishna. Haribol means in Sri Krishna's name, Hare Krishna. So they can say, he says, they can say Radhe, Radhe, we will say Hare. And it says the minute you say Radhe, it must be followed, Radha must be followed by a name of Krishna. Radha Krishna, Radha Giridhari. Except I think they made there was some past resolution that maybe on occasions like Radha Ashtami, then that's okay to sing that. But otherwise, Sahaja is just sentimental. And there's no need for it. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra has got everything in it. There's no need to sing any other. Is there Radha Giridhari is not in Hare Krishna? Radha Madhav not everything is in Hare. There's no need for it. There's nothing. Yeah. Yeah, so if you can read that article by Jayadvaita Maharaj, it'd be quite enlightening. But my point was just that impersonalism can start creeping into the community of devotees as well. We've got to be careful. Sometimes it starts very subtly, small changes that even Srila Prabhupada's time, there were all these little changes that were coming, but Srila Prabhupada was there and was correcting it. But as the movement gets bigger and bigger and bigger, little changes happen, you lose control, and then suddenly that becomes the norm. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is Krishna himself, and then Hare Krishna to you. It's everywhere, all over the world, which is fine. I mean, at least we're saying Hare Krishna, it's good, but the Prabhupada's here. What would he be? So like that, things can happen. That's also part of the type of thing. Anyway, I apologize for any offenses or anything, not to criticize anyone, but it's just things that I've heard and what we can discuss. Right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Mancha Kalpatru, Kripa Sindhu Bhyo, Chaparitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Ananta Prabhu Vaishnavi.
Kanana Prabhu